Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing my power rankings for the Asia region or the APAC region following the Summer Showdown. We had an interesting tournament this past weekend, especially in North America, but in Asia there were some interesting things that happened as well. So we're going to start my power rankings this week with the Asia region. Now, a couple of things that I want to say. One, this is only the first video. The second video, which will be going up on Friday, will be my power rankings for North America. North America was by far the more interesting region in this tournament, and there's a lot of things that I want to talk about and that change with North America, so that will be coming out on Friday, so stay tuned for that. The other thing, of course, is that this is my opinion. These are my rankings. These are how I rank the teams based on what I've seen and the things that I favor, things that I put ahead of other things, so on and so forth. I think that there's a lot of really interesting teams in this Asia region, even if it is only 7 teams. I think it's a really close region. I think it's a really interesting region. So I look at what we have in Asia, and I look at the teams, and I rank them accordingly. Let me know your own thoughts on my rankings in the comments down below. You can leave your own rankings if you want, whatever floats your boat, but why don't we just get it started, and let's start with number 7. Coming in at number 7, I have the Chengdu Hunters. They were number 6 in my last power rankings. They are now number 7 here in Asia. And honestly, they were the most disappointing team in Asia over the past month. They did not win a single match. They had a couple close series here and there, but ultimately it wasn't very good. Their record isn't that good. They have looked really shaky, and they've especially been trying to run a ton of meta compositions, which usually you'd say that's a good thing. Chengdu doesn't look that good running the meta. They are by far the weakest team in Asia when it comes to running meta compositions, and it has become increasingly more noticeable when they play against teams in Asia who are actually good teams. Asia's a tough region to be in. I think Chengdu would be a better team if they were in North America. I think they'd be beating a lot of other teams. You know, they're better than the Justice, the Uprising. They'd probably beat the Titans. I wouldn't be surprised if they could beat the Fuel, the Defiant, even the Gladiators. There's a number of teams in North America that I think the Chengdu Hunters are certainly better than, that they have looked better than at times. But Chengdu isn't really an inconsistent team, right? They are a team that is pretty consistently bottom of Asia, and every so often gets a big win over a better team. But it hasn't been something that's happened in a while, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. They seem to have very specific compositions that they succeed on. Jinmu's Genji was very good this past weekend. This past tournament. They found the most success when Jinmu was able to play the Genji. Other than that, they didn't really find a whole lot in the way of success. I think the Chengdu Hunters are a team that are struggling, and they're a team that I would expect, hopefully, better things from in the future. But for right now, I'm putting them here at 7. I think they have looked to be the weakest so far, and they haven't shown many signs of improvement, where I think many of the other teams in this region have. At number 6, I have the London Spitfire. Now, this is a very close one for me between the 6 spot and the 5 spot, who we'll get to here in a little bit. And I'll explain why I gave the 5 spot the edge when I get there. But my thing with London that is still kind of the big sticking point for me is there's still a lot that I think we need to learn from the London Spitfire. They have looked very good in a number of scenarios. They've looked good in certain metas. I think that they have looked really good when they can enable Bernard to have huge plays. I think Bernard's a really solid Sigma. I think he's one of the top flex tanks in this region right now. And I think JMac has had a pretty solid season so far. I don't think he's a great main tank. I don't think he's one of the best main tanks that we've seen. But I think he's good enough and solid enough to guide a successful London Spitfire team. And I think they've found a ton of success in DPS and support. But they just still lack the polish of a team like New York or Shanghai or Guangzhou, or even Hangzhou in some cases, that would elevate this team to the higher levels. London is a strong team that just needs to pull things together a little bit more. But I think this is a team where there's 10 players on this London Spitfire roster that I look at and I say they can be the London Spitfire of the future, and they can provide them with everything they need. I don't really think there's a ton of additions the Spitfire need to make. I think the team is good enough when you can give this team more time to gel, to grow, to improve, to have more time together in a system such as the one the London Spitfire have. I think this Spitfire team will be a much better team. They had good wins in this past month. They beat Chengdu, they beat Hangzhou, both relatively dominant victories. But they haven't found any success against these teams that we would consider better than they are. At least in like the top echelons of this Asia region. Your Guangzhous, your Shanghais, your New Yorks, even your Seouls, they haven't had any success against. So I need to see London compete better against your top dogs, your best teams in Asia before I'm ready to give them a top 5 spot, but I think they're right on the outside of that. I think they're still a very good team. They're a very fun team to watch. They're a team that's on the up, but for right now, I have them here at number 6. Here at number 5, I have the Hangzhou Spark, which you may have picked up based on what I was saying with London. Hangzhou, I think, is very similar to London, but they have found slightly more success, and I think their roster is just slightly better than London. Yes, Hangzhou has struggled recently. They didn't have a great performance in the Summer Showdown, losing to New York in very convincing fashion. In the lead up to the Summer Showdown, they lost to London, they lost to Guangzhou, they lost to Shanghai. They did beat New York, though, in the lead up to the Summer Showdown. So the Hangzhou Spark are not a team that I think are doomed. I think there's going to be things that will have to improve for this team. You know, Gushui's been in China for the past month, so that might help when he's able to come back to the team. That may be of benefit. I don't think it's a huge thing that would make this team all of a sudden way better, but it would help this team, I think, who lost some games they probably shouldn't have lost. They should have gone into their match against London and been favored, and they probably should have won that match, and they ultimately fell flat and weren't able to do so. Spark, what I like about the Spark is that the Spark have a very dominant DPS duo in Godsby and Architect. When Godsby and Architect are playing at their peak, they are arguably one of the best 3 DPS duos in the league, if not the best DPS duo in the league. It's a little hard to say what the best one is because it really kind of flip-flops depending on what's going on in the moment. But very good DPS duo with Godsby Architect. One of the best main tanks in the league, in my opinion, in Gushui. QOQ has been a very good flex tank so far in the time that we have seen of QOQ. And I think that we've seen a lot of really promising things from their support line, whether it be Mika, whether it be IDK, whether it be Beye. I'd like to see more Coldest in the lineup and see what he looks like because I've heard very good things about Coldest. This is a strong team, the Hangzhou Spark. Very talented roster who I think are putting together a lot of the pieces. QOQ's been with this team now for only a month. We've only seen about a month of Architect with this team. More time, I think, with this Hangzhou Spark team will make them a better team, a stronger team. I think we'll see them improve over time. Where they get the edge over the London Spitfire, like I said, comes down to the fact that the Hangzhou Spark have had more success against some of these top-level teams. They've beaten the Guangzhou Charge. They've beaten the NYXL. They've beaten the Seoul Dynasty. They've found more success against the higher-level teams in this region, where London has been unable to do so. And I think that is proof that even though the Spark maybe aren't at their best right now, their peak is higher than what London's is. So I have them here at number 5. At number 4, I have the Seoul Dynasty. Now, the Seoul Dynasty, not the best team. I think we all can agree that the Seoul Dynasty are not the best team in the world right now. But I think that the Seoul Dynasty, though I have dropped them 2 spots from my last power rankings, I actually feel better about the Seoul Dynasty now than I did back then. Because we've seen more adaptation from the Seoul Dynasty. We've seen them work Slime more into the roster, and they've found wins with Slime in the roster. We've seen them work Michelle more into the roster, and find wins with Michelle in the roster. we're seeing the Seoul Dynasty make changes, adapt, and improve in areas where we were never seeing adaptations and improvements from them in the past. And I think that, for me, gives me a ton of promise for the Seoul Dynasty. I still don't think they're a perfect roster. I still think that their team would be better if they added another flex tank player. I think there's a reason why we didn't see a ton of Michelle, even if we did see him play very well, especially against Chengdu, and I thought he played okay against Shanghai. It's a little difficult to tell how well you're doing when you're playing as a team like Shanghai, but I digress. It's something to look at when you look at this Seoul Dynasty team. They have shown clear improvement and clear adaptation in some of their recent matches. Yes, they had that abysmal showing against the NYXL at the beginning of the Summer Showdown qualifiers, and they had some rough matches against some other teams in there as well. They had another match against Shanghai that they lost, though they did take the first map win over the Shanghai Dragons, dominant starting six. We're seeing improvement from the Seoul Dynasty in ways I didn't think we had. Prophet, who had been criticized pretty heavily for his Echo play, I thought actually looked much better on Echo. I don't think he's the best Echo by any means, but I think he has looked much better on Echo as time has gone on. His Genji looked very, very good against London. There were still some weird decisions the Seoul Dynasty made, such as not running a ton of Prophet Genji when they were playing against Shanghai. They seemed to want to play that much less, which I thought was an interesting decision when you succeeded with it a lot against London. So I don't think that this Seoul Dynasty team is perfect by any means. I think there's a lot of things that need to be improved upon for this team before I'm ready to say, yes, they are a top 3 team in this Asia region. But I think if they were in North America, they'd be finding a lot more success. I think we'd be seeing this team look a little bit stronger. I don't think they would become as hardened. I think they'd probably be a little bit weaker overall because they wouldn't be playing against such great opponents who would toughen them up and harden them. But I think what we will see with the Seoul Dynasty as time goes on is they might make an addition here before the end of the season, though I don't really think it's likely. Where I think it's more possible is we see them in the offseason look to bolster the 2 to 3 spots, where I think they need more depth, an additional DPS player, an additional flex tank, and then possibly a little more depth in another DPS player or a support change if they feel like that's the best option. But this is a team who I think are very close to being where they need to be. I would love to see more from the Seoul Dynasty team. I think they have a ton of potential, but they have still found struggles to realize that potential, though I think they're getting closer and closer and closer to fully finding that peak Seoul Dynasty and being able to find that consistency with that peak. Up next at number 3, I have the New York Excelsior. The NYXL are a team who have been at the top of the world, and at times it seems like they are at the bottom of the world, though they're still one of the top teams in the league. What I think New York's problem is, and it's something I talked about this past video, the one that went out on Monday, when I talked about just my recap of the tournament, is I think New York's problem is that they lack the polish and the coordination that we see from a lot of other top teams. Shanghai are a very coordinated and polished team. Guangzhou are a very coordinated and polished team. You go over to North America, San Francisco is an incredibly coordinated and polished team. Whereas you look at a team like Philadelphia, or even a team like Paris, where Paris, much more so coordinated, I'd say, than a team like Philadelphia. Philadelphia wants to play a super brawly style, right? They just want to brawl it out. They don't really seem to play to the coordination bit of it. They just kind of go in and do what they want to do. New York, to me, is a team that does a very similar thing. I think New York has struggled to adapt to the quicker changing metas that have happened recently. And I think that ultimately New York has some personnel problems that have kept them from being able to really compete against your Shanghai Dragons and your Guangzhou Charge this season. I think the NYXL are just so talented that when it comes to them playing against teams like Seoul, like London, like Chengdu, they're not going to really struggle that much. They may struggle a little bit against those teams, but they always pull out the win against these lower level, weaker teams who just aren't at the same level of talent, though the Seoul Dynasty are in some areas, I think, certainly as talented as the NYXL. New York, to me, is a team who, when they go up against a team who is weaker than them on personnel, they have a better chance of winning because, they're just the better team overall. But teams that are polished, I think, are the teams that New York struggle with the most, which is not the case, I think, in the past. In the past, I think New York was the super polished team. But the way the roster has changed over time, I don't think that's really necessarily true any longer. I think New York needs to look into making some roster adjustments based on what they have on the roster. I'd like to see more play out of Mondu and Bianca. They're young main support and young flex tank player, respectively. I think Mondu and Bianca could provide a bit of a change to this team in the way they've played, where I think that they've just gotten to the point where New York's not really fun to watch unless Hawksall's playing Genji. They look scrappy, they look uncoordinated, and they look lost in a lot of cases. And I think that what they need is to figure out the best way to play these more fast-paced brawly compositions that they seem so intent on playing, while also realizing that they have roster weaknesses in certain areas that they need to just iron out, either by bringing in more players or by using their reserves to make them look even stronger. I'd like to see some more potential double flex DPS looks out of them with Libero Hawksall, if there's metas that it's possible. I'd like to see as much Nene Hawksall as possible. I think the team looks better when those two are playing. They look at their best when those two are in. Right now, there's not a huge difference between when Mondu or Animo plays, but I would still like to see more Mondu because I think he provides a lot to this team going forward. And I'd like to see Bianca play because Hotba, for me, honestly, has been the biggest disappointment for this New York team. I think Hotba has struggled a lot this season, and I want to see more out of this young flex tank player in Bianca. So that is New York, and that is why I have them here at number 3. At number 2, I have the Summer Showdown APAC Tournament Champions, the Guangzhou Charge. And I know a lot of people are going to look at this, and they're going to say the Guangzhou Charge just won the tournament. They beat New York in a dominant fashion. They beat Shanghai in a relatively dominant fashion. What is your reasoning for putting Guangzhou here at number 2? And I think ultimately it comes down to just look at the season so far and look at this past weekend and tell me that this was more so Guangzhou, who are a very good team, found a meta that benefited them more than it benefited Shanghai. When hero pools were getting introduced, everybody knew that what would happen is it would lead to some teams being better than others in certain areas, right? And while the hero pools themselves aren't really in play for the most part anymore, especially in tournament play, the fundamental idea of hero pools is still there, in that the metas change up super quickly, and the metas change up a lot. With these recent Genji changes, it really played into the strengths of the Guangzhou Charge. Eileen's Genji was insane. His Genji was incredible. Krong plays a great Sigma. When you can have those two playing heroes that they're really good at, you can put Happy on the Widowmaker. This is a team who are playing to their strengths. I don't think they're the best team in the region. I think they're obviously the second best team in the region. I think they're an incredible team still. They have incredible coordination, incredible polish, incredible players in terms of just talent. And this is a team who I think really are one of the top 4 teams in the league, potentially. They have looked insane recently. They have looked only better and better and better as the season has progressed. They haven't lost a match since the May Melee. And if you take out their loss to Seoul in the May Melee, they haven't lost since, I think, April. So this is a really good Guangzhou Charge team who are really, really, really performing at a high level right now. Somewhat sneakily, I think, because you look at this team, you're like, okay, yeah, but they're playing like some weaker teams in Asia. They're beating Chengdu, they're beating London, they're beating Hangzhou. They're also beating New York and now Shanghai. I think it's time to really look at this Guangzhou Charge team as a legit title contender and as possibly the best team in Asia. I'm not ready to say that yet. I think Shanghai have still looked better as a whole, and there's a lot of instances this past weekend where I think you could still make an argument that Shanghai were the best team in play. But the Guangzhou Charge played best when it mattered most. That was against the Shanghai Dragons. So I think ultimately, when it comes down to it, the Guangzhou Charge, very strong team. While I don't think they are necessarily the best team in Asia yet, they are certainly making a case to be so soon. Finally, at number 1, I have the Shanghai Dragons. No real surprise here. This is a team who, when they play their main 6, they have lost 1 map all season. Lip Fleta, Void, Fearless, and then Izayaki Lee Jae-gon. Those 6, when they play together, are almost undefeated. They're practically unstoppable. This past weekend, when those 6 were in, they won every map. They didn't play those 6 for the majority of the series against the Guangzhou Charge. The Guangzhou Charge come out victorious. There's a lot of questions, I think, surrounding those coaching decisions. The decisions to play DM for 4 maps, play Lip for only 2, and win the 2 maps that Lip were playing and lose the 4 maps that DM were playing. There's a lot of things to look at there. Certainly a lot of questions to be raised. I don't think it's on DM at all. I think DM played well. I think it's just a bit of a coordination problem. And if you're the team and you think, hey, we want to be able to play around DM more, we want DM to be a part of our main lineup because he's just such a talented player and he plays these specific heroes that we need, the Widowmaker, the Ashe, at such a high level that even though Lip is good, DM just plays them better. It makes sense to try to work him into the lineup in whatever way you can. But when push comes to shove, their best lineup is when Lip is in. And when Lip is in, this team is pretty much unstoppable. Obviously, the other 5 players also need to be in for this team to be pretty much unstoppable, but this is a very good team. They look good in pretty much every meta. There's not really a hole on this roster. They have a very deep roster as well. They have a full 12 players on this roster, so there's really nothing that stops the Shanghai Dragons team from being really good, other than having another team play completely out of their mind when you're not even playing your best 6 players you can play. I still think the Shanghai Dragons are the #1 team in Asia. I would still argue they're also the #1 team in the Overwatch League right now. Not really a whole lot to say in regards to them. They're really good. They're still going to beat a lot of people, and I would still put them as one of the title contenders and one of the title favorites for the end of the season. So those are my Asia region power rankings. Here is just a quick little look at them again in case you wanted to see them. But let me know your thoughts on my power rankings in the comments down below, and let me know your own power rankings in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you down there. I think this is a really interesting region. I think it's a really good region. I think a lot of these teams are arguably top 10 teams in the league, even if they're not, like one of the top teams in Asia in particular. I think the Asia region is just so good and so strong that when you pit them at the end of the season against a lot of these North American teams, we're going to see that tons of these teams find a ton of success. It's hard to look at these teams and call them bad, but I think that there really are just spots where these teams just naturally slot in very well that makes it seem like it's not that difficult to really say what the power rankings are. But it's interesting, and I would still love to hear from you and your thoughts in the comments down below. But if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. I've been reading all your comments. They've been lovely, so thank you so much. Makes my day when people say that I made something that they enjoyed. It's just a very rewarding thing to see, and I love all of your support. But thank you for everything. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all staying safe, staying healthy, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.